Clara stepped off the train with a hopeful heart, clutching her small brown suitcase tightly. The railway station in the western town of Red Oak was loud with voices, clattering wheels, and the whistles of steam engines. But for Clara, everything felt distant. Her focus was only on the man she had traveled across the country to meet. She had come as a mail-order bride, carrying a promise of a new home and a new beginning. After years of searching for stability, she smoothed her dress and took a deep breath. The letter she had received months ago from a man named Mr. Dalton Reed had spoken warmly of marriage, partnership, and of a life built together on his farm. Clara had imagined a small house, honest work, and maybe, just maybe, a kind companion. She stepped onto the wooden platform with a smile filled with hope. Dalton Reed stood near the station steps, holding a hat in one hand and tapping one boot impatiently. He scanned the crowd, clearly searching for someone. Clara lifted her hand slightly and walked toward him. For a moment, his eyes met hers. But instead of recognition or warmth, she saw confusion. Then disappointment. Then something sharper. You are Clara?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yes," she replied softly. "Clara Whitfield. I came from Missouri, like we discussed." Dalton looked her up and down, his eyebrows lowering. "You're not what I expected." Clara's smile faded. "The photographs were simple sketches." "I told you my appearance, yes, but I assumed," Dalton muttered, his voice rising slightly as people nearby turned to look. "I thought you would be slimmer. More proper." Clara's heart dropped. She stood frozen where she was, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her. Dalton shook his head and stepped back. "I can't take you home," he said bluntly. "This won't work." The words struck like cold wind. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. Dalton adjusted his hat, avoiding her eyes as if embarrassed to be seen near her. "I'm sorry," he said, but his voice held no real regret. "I need someone who fits what I imagined. I can't. I won't take you." With that, he turned away, leaving Clara on the platform alone. Whispers spread through the crowd. "That's the bride he ordered. He rejected her. Right here." Poor woman. Clara lowered her gaze, fighting back tears. She did not want to cry in front of strangers. She held her suitcase firmly and stepped aside to sit on a bench, trying to breathe steadily. What she didn't know was that someone else had been watching the entire scene from a distance. Near the edge of the platform stood a man named Elias Turner, a quiet rancher known in the area for his calm nature and steady character. Elias rarely spoke unless necessary, but he noticed everything. He had been at the station to pick up supplies. Not expecting to witness such a painful moment, Elias saw the sadness in Clara's eyes, the strength she used to hold herself together, and the way she thanked Dalton even when he humiliated her. That touched Elias deeply. While others stared or whispered, he simply watched with concern, his jaw tightening slightly. He hated disrespect, especially when directed at someone undeserving. The shadows grew long as the sun lowered. The crowd thinned. Clara sat alone, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't have enough money to return home. She didn't know anyone in town. Her plan was broken in seconds. Hours passed. The station grew quiet. Elias remained nearby, pretending to check his supplies, though he was only waiting to see if she would be all right. When the lamps were lit and the cold evening breeze began to sweep across the platform, he finally walked toward her. Clara felt footsteps and lifted her head. A tall man stood before her. He wore a simple brown coat, his dark hair slightly messy from the wind, and his eyes were calm and gentle. "You haven't eaten," Elias said softly. Not as a question, but as a fact. Clara blinked, surprised by his kindness. "No, I haven't." Elias nodded once. "It's cold, and the inn has warm food. You should eat." Clara hesitated. She had just met him. She didn't want to seem helpless. But she was hungry, tired, and unsure how to survive the night. "I don't have much money left," she admitted quietly. Elias didn't shift, didn't show judgment, didn't sigh. He simply said, "I'll take care of it." Clara's eyes widened slightly. "No, I can't accept you can," Elias said gently. Nobody deserves to sit hungry after a long journey. He spoke with calm certainty, not pity. Something about him made Clara feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Slowly, she nodded. Elias picked up her suitcase as if it weighed nothing and motioned toward the inn across the street. Clara followed him, grateful but nervous. She didn't know what to expect from this quiet rancher. When they entered the inn, the warm scent of stew filled the air. Elias paid the innkeeper for a full meal and a room for Clara, speaking softly and respectfully the entire time. Clara sat at the table, hands trembling a little, as she stared at the food. "You don't have to thank me," Elias said when she tried to speak. Anyone would do the same. But Clara knew very well that not everyone would. She had been rejected, stared at, whispered about. Yet here he was, kind, steady, and asking for nothing. They talked lightly as she ate. Clara told him about her journey and how she had hoped for a fresh start. Elias listened quietly, nodding only when needed, never interrupting. His silence wasn't cold. It was thoughtful. He was a man who chose his words carefully. When she finished eating, Elias stood. "You'll be safe here tonight," he said. "If you need anything, the innkeeper is trustworthy." Clara looked up at him, unsure how to express her gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. You didn't have to help me." Elias gave a small nod. "Maybe not, but it was the right thing." He stepped back, as if preparing to leave. Something inside Clara panicked a little. She had no one else to talk to, no plan for the morning. Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked softly. Elias paused. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes softened. "Yes," he said. "I'll check on you." And with that, he left the inn, disappearing into the cool, quiet night. The next morning, Clara woke early. She had barely slept, torn between embarrassment, worry, and the unknown future. She fixed her hair, washed her face, and tried to look composed. True to his word, Elias returned as the sun rose. Clara felt relief wash through her. Elias greeted her with a small nod, carrying a calm presence that steadied her. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Well enough," she replied. "Thank you again." Elias noticed the sadness in her eyes, the kind that came from years of judgment and disappointment. He stood there for a moment, thinking carefully before speaking. "You have nowhere to go," he said softly. "And not enough money to return home." Clara looked down. "Yes, I have a ranch," Elias continued slowly. "It's quiet. There is plenty of work. You would have your own room, your own space, no troubles, no pressure. Stay there until you decide what to do next." Clara stared at him, shocked. I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be," Elias said firmly. "I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it." Clara's chest tightened with emotion. She had never met someone so quietly kind. After a long pause, she nodded. Elias picked up her suitcase again and led her outside. They walked toward his horse-drawn wagon. He helped her climb in gently, then guided the horses down the dusty road toward his ranch. Clara sat beside him, watching the town grow smaller behind them. Despite her fear, she felt something new blooming inside, her small spark of hope, and beside her, driving the wagon with calm hands, was a man who had seen her true worth the moment the world tried to shame her. The wagon rolled slowly along the dusty road as Clara watched the town of Red Oak shrink behind them. The morning sun cast a warm golden glow over the fields, and the horses moved steadily, guided by Elias's calm hands. Clara's heart was a mix of nervousness and curiosity. She had never seen a ranch so large, so quiet, and so full of life at the same time. Rolling past wooden fences and wide pastures, she noticed horses grazing peacefully, a small pond glimmering in the sunlight, and a grove of old oak trees swaying gently in the breeze. Elias finally guided the wagon to a clearing, where a modest house stood, surrounded by barns and stables. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising warmth and cooked food. Clara could feel her chest tightening, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. This was the beginning of something new, chance to leave behind the hurt of the railway station, the whispers. And the rejection, Elias helped Clara down from the wagon, steadying her hand. "Welcome to the ranch," he said simply. His voice carried no pride or boasting, only honesty. Clara looked around. The house was small, but well kept, with flower beds near the door and a wooden porch that creaked gently under her feet. She noticed how the land stretched wide, rolling hills meeting the sky, and a few horses in the distance that seemed to glance in their direction. There was a peace in this place she had never felt before. "You will have a room in the house," Elias explained. "Separate from mine? You can rest there, unpack your things, and settle in." Clara nodded, unsure what to say. She had never imagined that a stranger would show her this much kindness, much less offer her a home when she had nowhere else to go. She felt an unfamiliar warmth growing in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and cautious hope. Inside, the house was simple but cozy. Wooden floors creaked slightly under her feet, and sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the small kitchen and living area. A gentle fire burned in the stove, filling the room with a soft warmth and the faint smell of bread. Clara could hardly believe this was real. "You can leave your things here," Elias said, gesturing toward a small room near the back. "I will show you where everything is." Clara stepped into the room. It was small but bright, with a single bed, a wooden dresser, and a window that overlooked the fields. She set her suitcase down and carefully opened it, placing her few belongings neatly. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of relief and belonging. She was not a burden here. She was safe. Later that morning, Elias introduced Clara to the routines of the ranch. He showed her the barn, where horses waited for feeding, and the pens for cattle. He explained how to handle the animals carefully, how to clean the stalls, and how to prepare feed. Clara listened attentively, eager to learn, though she felt a bit overwhelmed. She had never worked on a ranch before, but she was determined to do her best. "You don't have to rush," Elias said, as he noticed her hesitation. "Take your time. Learn slowly." Clara nodded, grateful for his patience. She realized that here, no one was judging her for appearances, for mistakes, or for being who she was. Everything depended on effort, care, and honest qualities she had in abundance, but rarely had the chance to show. By noon, Clara had learned to feed a few of the horses and clean their stalls. Her hands grew tired, but she felt a deep satisfaction from the work. Elias worked quietly nearby, guiding her when necessary, but mostly allowing her to find her own rhythm. Clara admired his calm demeanor, the way he handled the animals, and the respect he showed them. She noticed how even a simple action, like brushing a horse's coat, required care and patience, values she had forgotten in the rush of life before. During a short break, Clara sat on the porch with a glass of water. The wind whispered through the oak trees, and she closed her eyes for a moment. It was the first time she had felt truly peaceful in weeks. She reflected on the train station, the cruel rejection, and the man who had looked at her and turned away. It hurt to remember, but she also felt a quiet strength forming inside her. She had survived humiliation, uncertainty, and fear. Now, she had a chance to start over. Elias joined her on the porch. He leaned against the railing silently for a moment, watching the land stretch into the horizon. Clara could feel his steady presence beside her, reassuring but unobtrusive. "You did well this morning," he said quietly. "The animals respond well to you." Clara smiled shyly. "I was nervous. I didn't want to make mistakes." "You didn't," Elias replied. "And you won't. You are careful. That matters more than experience." The compliment warmed her heart. She had spent so long being judged for her looks, her weight, and her demeanor that hearing someone recognize her effort felt like a gift. Clara realized that she had worth beyond appearance, beyond shallow judgments, and here someone saw it. Over the next few days, Clara settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She learned how to prepare meals for herself and Elias, care for the animals, and manage the household chores. Every evening, she would sit by the window, watching the sun set behind the hills, thinking about how different her life had become in just a few days. Elias remained a quiet presence, never forcing her into conversation, but always observing, guiding, and encouraging. Clara noticed small gestures that revealed his character, how he repaired a fence gently but firmly, how he fed an injured horse before his own meal, and how he spoke softly to the ranch dog, even when it barked endlessly at passing birds. His kindness was quiet, unassuming, and genuine. Clara found herself drawn to it, though she did not fully understand why. One afternoon, a visitor arrived at the ranch. It was the man who had rejected her at the train station. He had heard rumors about her presence at Ilias's ranch and claimed he wanted to reconsider his decision. Clara felt a mixture of anger, fear, and disbelief. She had moved on, or at least tried to, but the memory of rejection returned sharply. Dalton Reed stepped into the yard, scanning the fields until he found her. "Clara," he called, his voice loud enough to carry across the barn. I've reconsidered. Perhaps we should talk." Clara's hands clenched slightly, but she stood tall. She did not flinch, though the man's presence still carried a sting from earlier. Elias quietly approached her side, his calm presence steadying her nerves. "No," Clara said firmly, her voice steady despite the emotion inside. "I will not go with you. I deserve someone who sees my worth, not just my appearance." Dalton frowned. "But I thought I know what you thought," Clara interrupted. "And you were wrong. I am not yours to choose or reject. I am capable, kind, and strong. I will not allow anyone to belittle me again." Her words were clear and powerful, and even Dalton seemed surprised. Elias gave a small nod, silent but full of approval. He had been watching Clara grow stronger every day, and now she stood firmly in her own dignity. The man's expression faltered, and he left without another word, muttering complaints under his breath. Clara felt a strange mix of relief and triumph. She had faced him and claimed her own life, her own choices. After he left, Clara and Elias stood together on the porch. She looked at him, unsure if she should speak. Elias simply smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth lifting just enough to show pride. He did not say anything immediately, giving her space to process the event. Clara realized that he understood her strength, respected it, and would never try to diminish it. As the days turned into weeks, Clara continued to flourish on the ranch. She became skilled at feeding and caring for the animals, repairing fences, and managing the household. Elias would occasionally offer guidance, but mostly he let her find her own path. She began to feel a sense of independence, an accomplishment she had never known before. The townspeople slowly began to notice the change in her. When they passed the ranch, they saw a woman working diligently, confident in her movements, and respected by the quiet rancher who had taken her in. Whispers of admiration began to replace the whispers of judgment, though Clara paid little attention. She had learned that her worth did not depend on the opinions of strangers. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara stood near the pond, brushing a horse's coat. Elias joined her silently, watching the reflection of the sunset in the water. The ranch had grown quiet, peaceful, and full of gentle life. Clara felt a calm she had never known, and a sense of belonging that was deeply comforting. Elias spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret. "You are doing well, Clara. You have strength and heart. Not everyone sees it, but I do." Clara felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of gratitude and something more she could not name. She realized that in this quiet place, with a man who truly saw her, she could begin to rebuild the life she had dreamed of. A life not defined by rejection or judgment, but by effort, care, and genuine respect. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt hopeful. She had been rejected, humiliated, and uncertain, yet she had found a sanctuary, a place where her work mattered, where her kindness was valued, and where she was recognized for who she truly was. And beside her, Elias Turner remained a constant, quiet, supportive man who had seen her true worth from the very beginning. The seasons slowly changed on Elias Turner's ranch. Spring brought the smell of fresh grass, the sound of young calves learning to walk, and the soft chirping of birds in the oak grove. Clara had grown accustomed to the rhythm of ranch life, learning to rise early with the sun, tend to the animals, cook hearty meals, and care for the house. Each day she felt a stronger sense of purpose, and with every task completed, her confidence grew. Elias watched her quietly, as he always did, never needing to speak to acknowledge her efforts. He noticed the gentle way she handled the horses, the patience she showed with the animals, and the steady calm she brought to the household. The ranch, once quiet and lonely, now hummed with life and warmth thanks to her presence. Even the neighbors began to talk about her, noting her kindness and skill, though they did so softly, respecting the quiet bond between the rancher and his guest. Despite her growing sense of belonging, Clara could not ignore the feeling stirring within her. She had started to admire Elias not for his strength alone, but for his patience, kindness, and quiet wisdom. She noticed the small gestures he made without effort, feeding the animals gently, checking fences before sunrise, fixing broken tools without complaint, and always speaking with honesty and respect. There was a depth to him that words could not capture. Clara realized that she felt more than gratitude. She felt trust, admiration, and a growing warmth in her heart. Elias, too, began to feel something he had not expected. He had always been a man of quiet habits, rarely drawn to others except when necessary. Yet Clara's presence had awakened something gentle inside him. Her courage, her patience, her kindness, and her ability to keep going despite hardship drew him in. He admired her strength and resilience and found himself smiling more than he had in years. He often caught himself glancing toward her, appreciating her efforts, yet respecting her independence. There was no rush, no pressure, only a quiet understanding that grew with each passing day. One evening, after a long day of chores, Clara sat on the porch brushing the horses' manes. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink as the sun dipped behind the distant hills. The ranch was peaceful, almost dreamlike. Elias joined her quietly, sitting on the wooden railing. He watched her work in silence, feeling a sense of calm he had not realized he missed until now. "You have done well, Clara," he said softly after a moment. His voice carried warmth without expectation. "The ranch has come alive because of you. Not just because of the work, but because of who you are." Clara paused, her hands resting on the horse's mane. She looked up at him, feeling a mix of surprise and emotion. I don't know what to say," she replied softly. "You have given me a chance I never thought I would have. A home, a place to belong. That is more than I could have imagined." Elias nodded, a small, gentle smile on his face. "You deserve it, more. You are not here because of me. You are here because of who you are. Your kindness, your patience, your strength. That is what matters." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were the tears of relief, gratitude, and the quiet joy of being seen for her true worth. She realized that Elias had not only given her shelter and work, but he had also given her dignity, respect, and the freedom to grow into herself without fear of judgment. Days turned into weeks, and Clara and Elias continued their routine. They worked side by side on the ranch, caring for animals, mending fences, and preparing meals. Their bond grew, unspoken, yet deep. Clara found herself laughing more, speaking more openly, and feeling a sense of safety she had never experienced before. Elias, in turn, found joy in her presence. Appreciating the small moments, the way she hummed while cooking, the careful attention she gave to each animal, and the quiet determination in her eyes. One afternoon, while Clara was feeding the horses near the pasture, she noticed a familiar figure approaching the ranch gates. Her heart sank. It was Dalton Reed, the man who had rejected her at the train station. He had come back, perhaps expecting to change her mind, perhaps hoping to reclaim what he had discarded. Clara's chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt the old fear and doubt creeping in. Dalton stepped onto the property and called out, "Clara, I have realized my mistake. I want to reconsider. Please, talk to me." Clara straightened her posture and met his gaze with calm strength. "No," she said firmly, her voice steady. "I will not go with you. I have found a place where I am valued, respected, and seen for who I am. I do not need someone who judges me by my appearance." Dalton's face faltered, and he opened his mouth, but no words came. Elias stood silently beside Clara, his presence solid and unwavering. Clara noticed the quiet support he offered without needing to speak. It was enough. Dalton finally turned and left, muttering under his breath, unable to comprehend the change in her. Clara exhaled, feeling relief and a surge of confidence. She had faced her past and stood strong. Elias turned to her, his eyes soft. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "I am proud of you." Clara smiled, her heart full. "Thank you, Elias, for everything." Summer arrived, the ranch flourished. Crops grew tall and healthy, animals thrived, and the house was filled with warmth and laughter. Clara had become indispensable, not just in work, but in spirit. Her energy, care, and joy transformed the ranch into a home. She had found a sense of belonging, purpose, and stability that had seemed impossible months ago. Elias and Clara began to spend more time together, not out of necessity, but because they enjoyed each other's company. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, sharing stories of the past, dreams for the future, and quiet observations about the land and animals. Each conversation, though simple, deepened their understanding of each other. Clara admired Elias's integrity, his patience, and the gentle strength that guided every action. Elias admired Clara's courage, kindness, and resilience, the qualities that had allowed her to endure hardship and emerge stronger. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with deep oranges and purples, Elias spoke softly. "Clara, I want you to know something. From the day I saw you at the station, I recognized your worth. Not because of your appearance, but because of your heart, your strength, and your spirit. You are remarkable." Clara's eyes widened, tears forming again. "Elias, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied gently. "I only want you to know that I value you. Not as a worker, not as a guest, but as someone I respect and care for deeply." Clara felt her chest swell with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, appreciated, and loved, not for what she looked like, but for who she was. She reached out and gently took Elias's hand, feeling warmth and comfort in the simple touch. "I care for you too," she whispered. "More than I expected to care for anyone." Elias smiled faintly, squeezing her hand gently. "Then we understand each other." As the months passed, their bond grew into quiet love. They did not rush. They did not force feelings. Instead, they allowed trust, respect, and mutual admiration to grow naturally. The ranch became not just a place of work, but a home filled with joy, laughter, and gentle love. Clara and Elias shared quiet dinners, long walks through the fields, and evenings watching the sun set behind the hills. Each moment strengthened their connection and deepened their respect for one another. Finally, one crisp autumn morning, Elias spoke to Clara as they stood together on the porch, the golden leaves swirling around them. "Clara, I want you to stay here. Not as a guest, not just as help, but as my partner. Will you consider it?" Clara's heart leaped. She looked into his eyes, seeing honesty, respect, and deep affection. She smiled through tears and nodded. "Yes, Elias, I will." The wedding was small, simple, and full of warmth. Neighbors, friends, and the few townspeople who had come to know her kindness attended. The ceremony was held in the grove of oak trees near the house, where sunlight filtered softly through the branches. Clara wore a simple dress, and Elias stood beside her with quiet pride. There were no grand gestures, no fanfare, only genuine love, and the affirmation of two hearts that had found each other in the quietest, most meaningful way. The townspeople, who had once whispered about her appearance and rejected her, now saw the truth. Clara was strong, kind, and courageous. She had faced rejection, fear, and uncertainty, and had found a home and love because of her character, not despite it. And Elias, the quiet rancher, had found a partner who enriched his life, brought warmth to the ranch, and shared in his values and dreams. Together, Clara and Elias built a life filled with respect, honesty, and love. The ranch thrived, the animals flourished, and the house became a true home. Clara's past, once filled with rejection and judgment, became a distant memory. She had found a place where she was valued, loved, and respected in doing so. She had discovered her true worth, and in the quiet moments, as the sun set behind the hills and the ranch lay peaceful and golden, Clara and Elias stood together, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, and lives forever changed not by judgment, rejection, or appearances, but by courage, kindness, and the recognition of true worth.